and a former top US military chief demanded a reckoning for Russia over its war with Ukraine. Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, a retired commanding general of the US Army Europe, from whom you'll hear in a moment, says another Kremlin tyrant could take Vladimir Putin's place unless Moscow faces the reality of what they've brought about. Let's get into the conversation then with Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. Good to have you on the programme, sir. Thank you. OK, what do you mean by a reckoning? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and thank you. What I'm saying is that Russia has been an empire for over 5 centuries. They've never been a state. And so they've never been in a situation where people had to have a reckoning with who they are, why they are like they are. And if that doesn't happen, then I think what we're going to see is whoever comes after Putin, whenever that is, will just be another guy like him. And so I think for the future of all of us, for all of our security, defeat of Russian forces is the best way to create that opportunity for Russians to have that reckoning, and frankly, for war crimes to be held, for criminals to be held accountable.
You say Russians, Lieutenant General, how much support do you think there is for Vladimir Putin in his home country?
Well, of course, it's impossible to know for sure, since there is no legitimate media there that's able to cover and report what's going on, nor is there a legitimate sort of legislative body that could hold the leader of the country accountable. But one of the indicators on which I rely was last fall when the Kremlin called for a partial mobilization because they were in such need of troops. 500,000 military-age males left the country rather than be mobilized.
You say the war has to be won. What more does the West, NATO, what should they be doing, Lieutenant General?
Well, let me say 3 things. And I did mention this yesterday when I was at Policy Exchange. I was grateful to have the privilege to be there with them. Number one, the leaders of the West, including my president, President Biden, who has otherwise done a superb job, they have got to identify the strategic outcome for which we're all contributing. It can't be just we're with you for as long as it takes, Ukraine. It has to be an outcome that the American president, the British prime minister, the German Bundeskanzler, the French president all agree that we're trying to achieve, whatever that's going to be. And second, they need to say, we want Ukraine to win. They haven't said that yet. They give encouragement and billions of dollars and pounds worth of contribution, but they haven't said we want Ukraine to win. I think that's a problem. In real terms, they need long-range precision capability that can enable Ukrainian forces to make Crimea untenable for Russian forces. That's the decisive terrain that has to be liberated.
What does victory look like then for Ukraine? Crimea as well is what you're saying, Lieutenant General.
Yes. Number one, of course, is total restoration of Ukraine's borders to 1991, to which Russia had agreed several times, by the way, and that obviously includes Crimea. Number two, a return of the thousands of Ukrainian children who have been deported by the Russians, get them back home to Ukraine. Number three, accountability for war crimes. The International Criminal Court has already indicted President Putin and Ms. Belova, his Minister of Children's Rights. Those are 3 key things that have to be done. And then I believe that Ukraine's security and stability really has to be assured by membership in NATO, and I think membership in the European Union. That's what victory looks like.
Finally, do you agree with the assertion by many, there will be no peace all the time Putin is in the Kremlin? He either has to be deposed or taken out or drop dead or whatever it might be.
I generally I stay away from ever advocating for regime change because my own country has had we don't have a great track record when we have tried to bring about regime change.
He's never going to agree to peace, is he, Lieutenant General? Let's be honest about it.
Well, actually, I'm not going to agree to that. Okay. I think his number one priority is his own survival and staying in power. And I think as long as he thinks he can still win, which means that we give up hope or we stop supporting Ukraine, I think he'll stick with it. But once he realizes they, in fact, are absolutely going to lose, I think he can change the narrative and then come up with a new reason to do something else and pull out. I mean, the Soviets did this in Afghanistan without much fanfare. Yes. They just left.
Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, I've got to just leave you now. You were at the Policy Exchange event this week. Thank you. You're the former Commanding General of the United States Army Europe and Commanding General of NATO's Allied Land Command as recently as 2018.